The Great Lakes are a series of interconnected freshwater lakes located in northeastern North America, on the Canada-United States border, which connect to the Atlantic Ocean through the St. Lawrence River. Consisting of Lakes Superior, Michigan, Huron, Erie, and Ontario, they form the largest group of freshwater lakes on Earth, containing 21% of the world's surface freshwater by volume. The total surface is 94,250 square miles, and the total volume is 5,439 cubic miles. Due to their sea-like characteristics, the five Great Lakes have also long been referred to as inland seas. Lake Superior is the second largest lake in the world by area, and Lake Michigan is the largest lake that is entirely within one country. The southern half of the Great Lakes is surrounded by the Great Lakes megalopolis. The Great Lakes began to form at the end of the last glacial period around 14,000 years ago, as retreating ice sheets carved basins into the land and they became filled with meltwater. The lakes have been a major highway for transportation, migration and trade, and they are home to a large number of aquatic species. Many invasive species have been introduced due to trade, and some threaten the region's biodiversity. Geography. Though the five lakes reside in separate basins, they form a single, naturally interconnected body of fresh water within the Great Lakes Basin. The lakes form a chain connecting the east-central interior of North America to the Atlantic Ocean. From the interior to the outlet at the St. Lawrence River, water flows from Superior to Huron in Michigan, southward to Erie, and finally northward to Lake Ontario. The lakes drain a large watershed via many rivers, and are studded with approximately 35,000 islands. There are also several thousand smaller lakes, often called inland lakes, within the basin. The surface area of the five primary lakes combined is roughly equal to the size of the United Kingdom, while the surface area of the entire basin is about the size of the UK and France combined. Lake Michigan is the only one of the Great Lakes that is located entirely within the United States. The others form a water boundary between the United States and Canada. The lakes are divided among the jurisdictions of the Canadian province of Ontario and the U.S. states of Minnesota, Wisconsin, Michigan, Illinois, Indiana, Ohio, Pennsylvania, and New York. Both Ontario and Michigan include in their boundaries portions of four of the lakes. Ontario does not border Lake Michigan, and Michigan does not border Lake Ontario. New York and Wisconsin each border two lakes, and the remaining states border one lake apiece. Bathymetry is the surfaces of Lakes Superior, Huron, Michigan, and Erie are all approximately the same elevation above sea level, while Lake Ontario is significantly lower, and because the Niagara Escarpment precludes all natural navigation. The four upper lakes are commonly called the Upper Great Lakes. This designation, however, is not universal. Those living on the shore of Lake Superior often refer to all the other lakes as the lower lakes, because they are farther south. Sailors of bulk freighters transferring cargoes from Lake Superior and northern Lake Michigan and Lake Huron to ports on Lake Erie or Ontario commonly refer to the latter as the lower lakes and Lakes Michigan, Huron, and Superior as the upper lakes. This corresponds to thinking of Lakes Erie and Ontario as down south, and the others as up north. Vessels sailing north on Lake Michigan are considered upbound, even though they are sailing toward its effluent current. Primary connecting waterways. The Chicago River and Calumet River systems connect the Great Lakes Basin to the Mississippi River system through man-made alterations and canals. The St. Mary's River, including the Sioux Locks, connects Lake Superior to Lake Huron. The Straits of Mackinac connect Lake Michigan to Lake Huron. The St. Clair River connects Lake Huron to Lake St. Clair. The Detroit River connects Lake St. Clair to Lake Erie. The Niagara River, including Niagara Falls, connects Lake Erie to Lake Ontario. The Welland Canal, bypassing the falls, connects Lake Erie to Lake Ontario. The St. Lawrence River connects Lake Ontario to the Gulf of St. Lawrence, which connects to the Atlantic Ocean. Lake Michigan, Huron. Lakes Huron and Michigan are sometimes considered a single lake, called Lake Michigan-Huron, because they are one hydrological body of water connected by the Straits of Mackinac. The straits are 5 miles wide and 120 feet deep. The water levels, currently at 577 feet, rise and fall together, and the flow between Michigan and Huron frequently reverses direction. Other significant bodies of water: Lake Nipigon, connected to Lake Superior by the Nipigon River, is surrounded by sill-like formations of mafic and ultramafic igneous rock hundreds of meters high. The lake lies in the Nipigon Embayment, a failed arm of the Triple Junction in the Mid-Continent Rift System event, estimated at 1,109 million years ago. Green Bay is an arm of Lake Michigan, located along the south coast of the Upper Peninsula of Michigan and the east coast of Wisconsin. It is separated from the rest of the lake by the Dore Peninsula in Wisconsin, the Garden Peninsula in Michigan, and the chain of islands between them, all of which were formed by the Niagara Escarpment. Lake Winnebago, connected to Green Bay by the Fox River, serves as part of the Fox-Wisconsin Waterway and is part of a larger system of lakes in Wisconsin known as the Winnebago Pool. Georgian Bay is an arm of Lake Huron, extending northeast from the lake entirely within Ontario. The bay, along with its narrow westerly extensions of the North Channel and Mississauga Strait, is separated from the rest of the lake by the Bruce Peninsula, Manitoulin Island, and Cockbin Island, all of which were also formed by the Niagara Escarpment. Lake Nipissing, connected to Georgian Bay by the French River, contains two volcanic pipes, which are the Manitou Islands and Calendar Bay. These pipes were formed by a violent, supersonic eruption of deep origin. The lake lies in the Ottawa-Bonachera Graben, a Mesozoic rift valley that formed 175 million years ago. Lake Simcoe, connected to Georgian Bay by the Severn River, serves as part of the Trent-Severn Waterway, a canal route traversing southern Ontario between Lakes Ontario and Huron. Lake Street, Clare, connected with Lake Huron by the St. Clair River and with Lake Erie by the Detroit River, is notable for the fact that Canadian territory along its southern shore lies south of the adjacent United States territory, although it is 17 times smaller in area than Lake Ontario and only rarely included in the listings of the Great Lakes. Proposals for its official recognition as a Great Lake are occasionally made, which would affect its inclusion in scientific research projects, etc., designated as related to the Great Lakes. Islands dispersed throughout the Great Lakes are approximately 35,000 islands. The largest among them is Manitoulin Island in Lake Huron, the largest island in any inland body of water in the world. The second largest island is Isle Royale in Lake Superior. Both of these islands are large enough to contain multiple lakes themselves. For instance, Manitoulin Island's Lake Manitou is the world's largest lake located on a freshwater island. Shipping connection to the ocean, the St. Lawrence Seaway and Great Lakes Waterway make the Great Lakes accessible to ocean-going vessels. However, shifts in shipping to wider ocean-going container ships, which do not fit through the locks on these routes, have limited container shipping on the lakes. Most Great Lakes traders of bulk material and bulk freighters of Seaway max size or less can move throughout the entire lakes and out to the Atlantic. Larger ships are confined to working in the lakes themselves. Only barges can access the Illinois waterway system, providing access to the Gulf of Mexico via the Mississippi River. Despite their vast size, large sections of the Great Lakes freeze over in winter, interrupting most shipping from January to March. Some icebreakers ply the lakes, keeping the shipping lanes open through other periods of ice on the lakes. The Great Lakes are also connected by canal to the Gulf of Mexico by way of the Illinois River and the Mississippi River. An alternate track is via the Illinois River, to the Mississippi, up the Ohio, and then through the Tennessee-Tombigbee Waterway, to Mobile Bay and the Gulf. Commercial tug and barge traffic on these waterways is heavy. Pleasure boats can also enter or exit the Great Lakes by way of the Erie Canal and Hudson River in New York. The Erie Canal connects to the Great Lakes at the east end of Lake Erie and at the south side of Lake Ontario. Water levels. The lakes contained in 2009 84% of the surface freshwater of North America. If the water were evenly distributed over the entire continent's land area, it would reach a depth of 1.5 meters. The source of water levels in the lakes is tied to what was left by melting glaciers when the lakes took their present form. Annually, only about 1% is new water originating from rivers, precipitation, and groundwater springs that drain into the lakes. Historically, evaporation has been balanced by drainage, making the level of the lakes constant. While the lake levels have been preserved, intensive human population growth only began in the region in the 20th century and continues today. At least 2 human water use activities have been identified as having the potential to affect the lake's levels: diversion and consumption. The water level of Lake Michigan-Huron had remained fairly constant over the 20th century, but has nevertheless dropped more than 6 feet from the record high in 1986 to the low of 2013. One newspaper reported that the long-term average level has gone down about 20 inches because of dredging and subsequent erosion in the St. Clair River. Lake Michigan-Huron hit all-time record low levels in 2013, according to the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. The previous record low had been set in 1964. By April 2015, the water level had recovered to 7 inches more than the long-term monthly average. Name origins. Lake Erie from Erie tribe, a shortened form of the Iroquoian word Arielhone, and Lake Huron named by French explorers for inhabitants in the area. Wyandot or Hurons. Lake Michigan from the Ojibwa word Michigami. Lake Ontario. Wyandot word Ontario. Lake Superior, English translation of French term Lac Superior, referring to its position north of Lake Huron. The indigenous Ojibwa call it Gitchigumi. Statistics. The Great Lakes contain 21% of the world's surface freshwater around the year 2000, 5,472 cubic miles, or 6.0 times 1015 U.S. gallons. This is enough water to cover the 48 contiguous U.S. states to a uniform depth of 9.5 feet. Although the lakes contain a large percentage of the world's fresh water, the Great Lakes supply only a small portion of U.S. drinking water on a national basis. The total surface area of the lakes is approximately 94,250 square miles, nearly the same size as the United Kingdom, and larger than the U.S. states of New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, Rhode Island, Massachusetts, Vermont, and New Hampshire combined. The Great Lakes coast measures approximately 10,500 miles. However, the length of a coastline is impossible to measure exactly and is not a well-defined measure. Of the total 10,500 miles of shoreline, Canada borders approximately 5,200 miles, while the remaining 5,300 miles are bordered by the United States. Michigan has the longest shoreline of the United States, bordering roughly 3,288 miles of shoreline, followed by Wisconsin, New York, and Ohio. Traversing the shoreline of all the lakes would cover a distance roughly equivalent to traveling halfway around the world at the equator. Geology. It has been estimated that the foundational geology that created the conditions shaping the present-day Upper Great Lakes was laid from 1.1 to 1.2 billion years ago, when 2 previously fused tectonic plates split apart and created the mid-continent rift, which crossed the Great Lakes tectonic zone. A valley was formed, providing a basin that eventually became modern-day Lake Superior. When a second fault line, the St. Lawrence Rift, formed approximately 570 million years ago, the basis for Lakes Ontario and Erie were created, along with what would become the St. Lawrence River. The Great Lakes are estimated to have been formed at the end of the last glacial period, when the Laurentide ice sheet receded. The retreat of the ice sheet left behind a large amount of meltwater that filled up to the basins that the glaciers had calved, thus creating the Great Lakes as we know them today. Because of the uneven nature of glacier erosion, some higher hills became Great Lakes islands. The Niagara Escarpment follows the contour of the Great Lakes between New York and Wisconsin. Land below the glaciers rebounded as it was uncovered. Because the glaciers covered some areas longer than others, this glacial rebound occurred at different rates. Climate. The Great Lakes have a humid continental climate. Köppen climate classification DFA and DFB, with varying influences from air masses from other regions including dry, cold Arctic systems, mild Pacific air masses from the west, and warm, wet tropical systems from the south and the Gulf of Mexico. The lakes themselves also have a moderating effect on the climate. They can also increase precipitation totals and produce lake effect snowfall. Lake effect. The most well-known winter effect of the Great Lakes on regional weather is the lake effect in snowfall, which is sometimes very localized. Even late in winter, the lakes often have no ice pack in the middle. The prevailing winds from the west pick up the air and moisture from the lake surface, which is slightly warmer in relation to the cold surface winds above. As the slightly warmer, moist air passes over the colder land surface, the moisture often produces concentrated, heavy snowfall that sets up in bands or streamers. This is similar to the effect of warmer air dropping snow as it passes over mountain ranges. During freezing weather with high winds, the snow belts receive regular snowfall from this localized weather pattern, especially along the eastern shores of the lakes. Snow belts are found in Wisconsin, Michigan, Ohio, Pennsylvania, and New York, United States, and Ontario, Canada. The lakes also moderate seasonal temperatures to some degree, but not with as large an influence as do large oceans. They absorb heat and cool the air in summer, then slowly radiate that heat in autumn. They protect against frost during transitional weather, and keep the summertime temperatures cooler than further inland. This effect can be very localized and overridden by offshore wind patterns. This temperature buffering produces areas known as fruit belts, where fruit can be produced that is typically grown much farther south. For instance, western Michigan has apple and cherry orchards and vineyards cultivated adjacent to the lake shore as far north as the Grand Traverse Bay in Nottawasaga Bay in central Ontario. The eastern shore of Lake Michigan and the southern shore of Lake Erie have many successful wineries due to the moderating effect, as does the Niagara Peninsula between Lake Erie and Lake Ontario. A similar phenomenon allows wineries to flourish in the Finger Lakes region of New York, as well as in Prince Edward County, Ontario on Lake Ontario's northeast shore. Related to the lake effect is the regular occurrence of fog over medium-sized areas, particularly along the shorelines of the lakes. This is most noticeable along Lake Superior's shores. The Great Lakes have been observed to help intensify storms, such as Hurricane Hazel in 1954, and the 2011 Goderich, Ontario tornado, which moved onshore as a tornadic waterspout. In 1996, a rare tropical or subtropical storm was observed forming in Lake Huron, dubbed the 1996 Lake Huron Cyclone. Rather large severe thunderstorms covering wide areas are well known in the Great Lakes during midsummer. These mesoscale convective complex or MCCs can cause damage to wide swaths of forest and shatter glass in city buildings. These storms mainly occur during the night, and the systems sometimes have small embedded tornadoes, but more often straight-line winds accompanied by intense lightning.